The slap echoed through the Gangnam Luxury Mall like a gunshot, sharp enough to shatter the Christmas music floating through the air. Sarah Burris stumbled backward, her burgundy dress catching the crystal chandelier light as she fell against a display of Cartier jewelry, ornaments exploding around her in a spray of gold and glass. Her cheek burned, her vision blurred. But it wasn't the pain that stole her breath. It was the face sneering down at her. Stephen Greer, her ex-fiancé, the man who'd abandoned her 4 years ago. For one terrible moment, the entire mall froze. Shoppers stopped mid-stride, shopping bags dangling from motionless hands. Phone cameras rose like 100 accusing eyes. Sarah looked up from the polished marble floor, blood trickling from where a shard had cut her palm, at the man who'd once promised her forever. "Don't look at me like that," Stephen said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You always were dramatic. Stay down where you belong." He had no idea. No idea that the poor, desperate ex he remembered, the one who'd begged him not to leave, who'd cried in her car with nothing but heartbreak and unpaid bills, who'd lost their baby alone in a foreign city, was gone. No idea she'd risen from those ashes. No idea about the thin platinum band hidden beneath her black leather glove, or the penthouse in Cheongdam-dong she'd left that morning, or the man whose name was now legally hers. And Stephen definitely had no idea about the 4 men in tailored black suits who'd gone rigid the moment his hand connected with her face, or that the tall Korean man striding through the crowd toward them wasn't mall security. Park Hae-jong, her husband, Seoul's most dangerous underground king. Sarah's phone buzzed in her clutch, still on the floor beside her. Through the cracked screen, she saw his name. Her hand trembled as she answered. "Are you hurt?" Hae-jong's voice was deadly calm, the kind of quiet that preceded storms. She watched realization start to creep across Stephen's face as he noticed the men surrounding him, the shift in the air, the way even the security guards were backing away. He'd just slapped the wrong woman. And in approximately 6 minutes, when Hae-jong's black Mercedes motorcade pulled into the mall's underground garage, Stephen Greer was going to learn a lesson about consequences that would obliterate his entire world. But he still didn't know it yet. Right now, in this frozen moment beneath the chandeliers, he still thought she was nothing. That was about to change. Before we dive deeper into this story of justice, power, and reclamation, I want to wish you all a blessed and magical holiday season. May your days be filled with love, protection, and the strength to rise above those who tried to keep you down. Now, do me a favor, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Your support means everything. Now, let's get into this dramatic journey. 7 hours earlier, Sarah had stood in their massive walk-in closet, running her fingers along a row of designer dresses that still felt surreal. Despite the luxury surrounding her, labels she'd once only seen in magazine spreads hanging like an expensive rainbow, she reached for something simple. A burgundy wrap dress. Understated. Safe. "You're doing it again," Hae-jong said from the doorway, already dressed in a charcoal 3-piece suit that probably cost more than her first year's rent in that basement apartment she'd once called home. He was devastating, sharp jawline, dark eyes that could freeze or burn depending on his mood, presence that commanded attention even in intimate spaces. Doing what? She turned, fastening a delicate gold necklace. "Choosing the least expensive things in your closet." He crossed to her, his hands sliding around her waist with practiced ease. "You're married to one of the most powerful men in Seoul. Stop shopping your own closet like you're still counting coins." She laughed softly, leaning into his warmth. "I like simple things. They remind me I'm real. I like spoiling you." His lips brushed her neck. "Humor me. You humor me by loving me exactly as I am." His expression softened in that way it only did for her. The underground king becoming just a man. Always. Then, more seriously, "Where are you going today?" "Just the Gangnam Mall. Some Christmas shopping for your mother." She kept her tone light. "I won't be long." Something flickered in his eyes. Hae-jong was protective to the point of obsession, a fact she both cherished and occasionally found suffocating. It came from losing people. from knowing what monsters walked the world wearing human faces. Take Min Seo and Taeyong with you. Baby, I don't need bodyguards to go shopping. His jaw tightened. Sarah, you know what I am. What I do. You know the enemies that creates. You don't leave this penthouse without security. Non-negotiable. The steel in his voice was absolute. This was Park Hae-jong, Seoul's underground king, speaking. Not just her husband. She cupped his face, feeling the tension in his jaw. Okay, I'll take them. The rigidity left his shoulders. Thank you. He checked his watch, platinum, simple but worth more than most cars. I have a meeting in Gangnam. I'll be done by 6. We have dinner reservations at 7:30. Where? That dangerous smile curved his lips. It's a surprise. Wear the red dress. The one I can't stop thinking about taking off you. Heat flooded her cheeks even as she smiled. Insatiable. Only for you. One more kiss, deep and thorough, leaving her breathless against the closet wall before he left, his cologne lingering in the air like a promise. 2 hours later, Sarah walked through the Gangnam luxury mall with Min Seo and Taeyong maintaining discreet distance behind her. The mall was a cathedral of wealth, marble floors reflecting massive crystal chandeliers, every storefront a shrine to excess. Christmas decorations sparkled everywhere, gold garlands, silver ribbons, elegant and expensive. She'd just exited a boutique, shopping bags from Hae-jong's mother's favorite stores in hand, when she saw him. Stephen Greer, standing near the Cartier display, looking older but still wearing that same entitled expression she remembered. Still wearing arrogance, like cologne. Their eyes met across the glittering corridor. And everything that happened next began with one simple truth. He still saw her as the woman he destroyed. He had no idea she'd become someone else entirely. Before we go further, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I love knowing how far these stories reach. And if you're drawn to true tales of power and mafia stories like this, hit that subscribe button so you never miss stories like this. As Sarah lay on the cold marble floor, blood trickling from her palm, her mind flashed back to another floor. Another version of herself. 4 years ago, Boston. She'd met Stephen Greer at a networking event for young professionals. He was charming, ambitious, working on his next big venture, a tech startup that was always 6 months away from changing everything. Sarah had been a graphic designer then, freelancing, making enough to cover her small apartment and student loans. Stephen had seemed like a dream. Attentive. Romantic. He'd sweep into her apartment with takeout and big ideas, talking until midnight about the future they'd build together. When my company takes off, he'd say, kissing her forehead, we're going to have everything. She believed him. When his funding fell through, the first time, she'd covered his rent. Just until the investors came through. When his car got repossessed, she'd added him to her insurance, let him use hers. When his credit cards maxed out, she'd opened a joint account. We're a team, he'd said. What's mine is yours. Except nothing was ever his. Only hers, slowly becoming his. The emotional abuse crept in like fog. Subtle at first. You're so sensitive. I was just joking. Why do you always have to make everything a big deal? Her friends noticed, tried to warn her. She defended him, made excuses, isolated herself to keep the peace. Then came the pregnancy test. 2 pink lines that should have meant joy. Stephen's face had gone white then cold. You're keeping it? I thought we'd be happy. Happy? Sarah, I can barely take care of myself. How am I supposed to handle a kid? We'd figure it out. Together. But there was no together. Not anymore. 2 weeks later, she came home to an empty apartment. Half the furniture gone. Her laptop, with all her client work, gone. The joint account, drained. $43,000 of her savings, her safety net, her future, vanished. Stephen left a note on the counter. You'll thank me for this someday. I'm not father material. Good luck. Good luck. She'd called him 17 times that first night. Then 50 more over the next week. He never answered. Eventually, his number was disconnected. The eviction notice came 30 days later. Sarah had been too paralyzed by shock, too sick with morning sickness, too broken to find new clients or ask for help. Pride and shame kept her silent even as the walls closed in. She lived in her car for 6 weeks. A 2008 Honda Civic that became her bedroom, her office, her prison. She parked in different lots each night, afraid of being noticed, of being moved along. She showered at a gym until her membership expired. She ate dollar menu items until even that became too expensive. The stress, the hunger, the fear, it consumed her from the inside. At 11 weeks pregnant, cramping in a grocery store parking lot, Sarah lost the baby. Alone. No insurance. No emergency contact. Just a foreign city that didn't know her name and a body giving up on futures she'd never hold. The hospital social worker had been kind but clinical. "Do you have someone to call?" Sarah had stared at the ceiling and said nothing. That was her lowest point. Not the miscarriage itself, but the profound invisibility of it. Of being so completely erased that her suffering happened in silence, witnessed by no one, mattering to no one. Stephen never knew, never called, never checked. She survived what should have destroyed her. Now, lying on this marble floor with Stephen sneering above her and 100 phones recording, Sarah felt the weight of that past life pressing against this present moment. But she wasn't that invisible girl anymore. She was Park Hae-jong's wife. Protected. Seen. Chosen. And as her husband's voice came through the phone, "Are you hurt?" Sarah realized something profound. Stephen thought this slap would put her back in her place. He had no idea her place had changed entirely. The crowd parted before Park Hae-jong like water before a ship's bow. He didn't run, didn't shout, didn't need to. He simply walked through the Gangnam luxury mall with the kind of calm that made people's survival instincts scream. Tall, immaculately dressed in a charcoal suit that moved like liquid shadow, his presence turned heads not from curiosity, but from instinct. The kind of recognition that happened in the spine before the brain caught up. Behind him, 6 men in black suits materialized from different corners of the mall, forming a loose perimeter. Min Seo and Taeyong, Sarah's bodyguards, had already moved to flank Stephen, their hands hovering near concealed weapons. Stephen noticed the commotion, turned, and saw a Korean man approaching with unsettling composure. "The hell is this?" Stephen laughed, still standing over Sarah. "Mall security? I'm a paying customer. This woman. Step away from her." Hae-jong's voice was quiet, almost conversational. But it carried. The remaining shoppers scattered to the perimeter, phones still recording but bodies obeying a primal command to create distance. Stephen straightened, his American arrogance flaring. "Listen, I don't know who you think you are, but this is between me and my ex. Why don't you mind your business before?" Hae-jong reached Sarah in 3 strides, kneeling beside her with a gentleness that contrasted violently with the energy radiating from him. His hand cupped her face, thumb brushing her reddening cheek. "Are you hurt?" "I'm okay," Sarah whispered. "You're bleeding." He examined her palm where glass had cut skin, his jaw tightening imperceptibly. Stephen watched this with growing irritation. "Oh, I see what this is. You found yourself some gangster boyfriend." He laughed, cruel and loud. "Jesus, Sarah, I knew you'd hit rock bottom, but marrying some thug? That's desperate even for you." Hae-jong didn't look at him. He carefully removed Sarah's glove, revealing the platinum wedding band underneath, and pressed a kiss to her knuckles. Then he stood, positioning himself between her and Stephen, and finally, gave Stephen his full attention. The temperature dropped. "My name is Park Hae-jong," he said with terrifying politeness. "And you just put your hands on my wife." The shift was immediate. Mall security guards, who'd been approaching cautiously, stopped dead. The manager, who'd been pushing through the crowd, went pale and started frantically making phone calls. Several onlookers gasped, and one woman actually stumbled backward. Stephen, oblivious, sneered. "Your wife? She married down to some Korean gangster to feel important. That's pathetic." "Stephen." Sarah's voice cut through, quiet but clear. She'd risen to her feet, Hae-jong's hand steadying her elbow. "This is my husband." "Yeah, I heard him." "So what?" You think marrying some local criminal makes you special? You're still the same worthless. Haijong raised one hand. Just lifted it slightly. For things happened simultaneously. Minesio and Taeyong seized Stephen's arms. Two mall security guards moved to assist, not to stop the detention but to help it. The mall manager arrived, breathless, bowing deeply to Haijong while stammering apologies. And every exit in the corridor suddenly had men in dark suits standing at attention. Stephen struggled against the grip. What the? Get off me. Do you know who I am? I'm an American citizen. I'll have your jobs. You'll be quiet. Haijong's voice never rose above conversation level, but Stephen's mouth snapped shut as if compelled. Take him to the security office. No one leaves this mall until I say so. Get me the footage from every angle. Yes, Mr. Park. Right away, Mr. Park. The manager was practically trembling. Wait. Stephen's bravado cracked as he was being pulled away. You can't do this. I have rights. I have lawyers. Do you understand how much money I'm worth? Haijong finally allowed himself the ghost of a smile. Cold. Predatory. Mr. Greer, he said softly, you have no idea how little your money means in my city. As Stephen was dragged toward the security office, still shouting about lawyers and embassies and consequences, Sarah watched her past being physically removed from her present. But Stephen still didn't understand. He still thought privilege would save him. He still had no idea who Park Haijong really was or what happened to people who touched what belonged to him. That lesson was coming. Park Haijong had killed his first man at 19. Not for power. Not for territory. For necessity. Because in Seoul's underground, hesitation was death, and mercy was a luxury reserved for those who'd already won. He was 34 now. 15 years of building an empire that existed in shadows, controlling everything from shipping routes to information networks, political favors to protection rackets. His name was spoken carefully. His presence announced without words. But the woman currently holding his hand, blood on her palm and fire in her eyes, knew him as something else entirely. 18 months ago, a charity gala in Gangnam. Haijong had attended out of obligation, a fundraiser for domestic violence survivors, hosted by a business associate's wife. He'd planned to write a check, make an appearance, leave. Instead, he'd noticed a woman standing alone near the silent auction table. She'd worn a simple black dress, no jewelry, hair natural and unstyled. Everything about her screamed she didn't belong in that room full of designer labels and casual wealth. But she'd held herself with quiet dignity, studying the auction items with genuine interest rather than performative charity. When their eyes met, she'd smiled, polite, careful, guarded. The smile of someone who'd learned to make herself small. Not enjoying the party, he'd asked in English, noting her discomfort. I'm a volunteer, she'd explained. Not really a guest. Just observing. They'd talked for 20 minutes. She hadn't known who he was. Hadn't recognized the deference others showed him, the way people gave him space. She'd simply talked to him like he was human. Shared that she'd rebuilt her life after trauma, found work at a nonprofit, was learning Korean, trying to belong in a city that still felt foreign. You're brave, he'd said. Starting over takes more strength than most people have. Her laugh had been soft, self-deprecating. Or just stubbornness. I didn't really have a choice. But she had. That was what struck him. She'd had every reason to give up, go home, disappear. Instead, she'd stayed. Rebuilt. Survived. He'd asked for her number. She'd hesitated, then given it. 6 months of careful courtship followed. Coffee dates. Long walks. Conversations that stretched past midnight. He'd told her pieces of his truth, enough that she understood what he was, the danger that came with him. She'd never flinched, never judged. Everyone has darkness, she'd said once. You just own yours. He'd proposed on a rooftop overlooking Seoul. Simple. Direct. Marry me. Not because I'm offering you safety or wealth, but because I choose you, and I want you to choose me back. She'd cried. Said yes. Asked for a small wedding. No spectacle. no performance. Just them and their truth. He'd given her that. Protection without possession. Respect without conditions. Choice in everything. Now, watching security footage of Stephen Greer's hand connecting with Sarah's face, Hae-jong felt a rage so profound it bordered on artistic. His second-in-command, Ji-hoon, stood beside him in the security office, wisely silent. How long has he been in Seoul? Hae-jong's voice was clinical. 3 days. Here for business meetings. Staying at the Shilla. Business. What kind? Tech consulting. He's meeting with venture capital firms. Hae-jong nodded slowly, his mind already constructing the architecture of Stephen's destruction. Death was too quick. Too merciful. Too final. Pull everything. His finances, his contracts, his relationships. I want to know everyone he's meeting with, every deal he's making, every secret he's keeping. He paused, something cold settling over his features. And find out if there are other women. There usually are. Yes, sir. Sarah appeared in the doorway, escorted by Min Seo. She'd cleaned the blood from her hand, composed herself, but Hae-jong could see the tremor in her fingers, the tightness around her eyes. He crossed to her immediately, pulling her into his arms. I'm sorry. For what? Her voice was muffled against his chest. That he exists. That he found you. That I wasn't there sooner. She pulled back, meeting his eyes. What are you going to do? Hae-jong cupped her face with both hands, gentle despite the violence humming through his veins. Nothing that will stain your hands. Nothing that will add to your nightmares. His thumb brushed her cheek where Stephen had struck her. But he will answer for this. Hae-jong. He won't die, he said quietly, a promise wrapped in threat. Death would be a kindness. By the time I'm done, he'll beg that it had been. Sarah searched his face, reading the darkness there, and slowly nodded. Okay, she whispered. But I need to face him first. I need him to see who I am now. Hae-jong smiled, soft for her, lethal in its implications. Then let's show him exactly what he lost. The security office was small, windowless, and suddenly felt like a cage. Stephen Greer sat in a metal chair, wrists zip-tied behind his back. Just a precaution, the head of security had said nervously. For the past 20 minutes, he'd been shouting about lawsuits, diplomatic incidents, how much this mistake was going to cost everyone. Then the door opened, and Park Hae-jong walked in. The temperature dropped 10 degrees. Hae-jong didn't rush. He closed the door with deliberate care, the soft click somehow more ominous than a slam. He leaned against the wall, arms crossed, and simply looked at Stephen for a long, terrible moment. Do you know what I do, Mr. Greer? His voice was conversational, almost friendly. I know you're some local thug who thinks he can. I control 40% of the shipping that moves through Busan. Hae-jong spoke over him calmly. I have relationships with 7 members of the National Assembly. Half the high-end real estate in Gangnam flows through companies I own. When people in Seoul's underground have problems, they come to me. Not because I'm the loudest. Because I'm the most efficient. Stephen's bravado flickered. I don't care about your criminal resume. You can't just. I'm not finished. Still calm. Still terrifying. You came to my city. You found my wife. And you put your hands on her in public. Hae-jong pushed off the wall, closing the distance until he loomed over Stephen's chair. Do you understand what that means? She's not Sarah's nobody. She's just some. The backhand came so fast Stephen didn't see it coming. Not hard enough to break anything. Just enough to shock. To establish dominance. Her name, Hae-jong said softly, is Sarah Park. She is my wife. And you will speak of her with respect or you will not speak at all. Blood trickled from Stephen's split lip. His eyes widened, finally, with fear. Good. You're learning. Hae-jong pulled a chair over and sat, the picture of casual authority. Now, let me tell you what I know about you, Stephen Greer. He pulled out his phone, scrolling with deliberate slowness. Age 36. Failed entrepreneur. For companies in 5 years. All dissolved or bankrupt. You have a pattern, Stephen. You find vulnerable women, move into their lives, drain their resources, and disappear. He looked up. Sarah wasn't your first, was she? Stephen's face went pale. Boston, 2019. Rebecca Chun. You took $28,000 from her joint account. Denver, 2021. Amanda Reeves. $15,000 and her grandmother's jewelry. Hai Zhang's voice remained clinical, a doctor listing symptoms. And Sarah. $43,000. Her laptop. Her safety. Her future. Those were loans. Misunderstandings. You can't prove. I can prove all of it. Hai Zhang leaned forward. I have bank records. Screenshots of messages you thought were deleted. And as of 20 minutes ago, I have testimony from 4 other women you've stolen from. He paused. One was 17 when you started dating her. Did you know there's no statute of limitations on certain crimes involving minors? The color drained completely from Stephen's face. But here's what fascinates me, Hai Zhang continued, his tone almost curious. You left Sarah pregnant. Did you know she lost that baby? Stephen's mouth opened. Closed. I didn't. You didn't know because you didn't care enough to check. She was homeless. Starving. And she lost your child in a parking lot, alone, because you'd taken everything from her. Something dark flickered in Hai Zhang's eyes. That's the woman you slapped today. The one who survived despite you. The one who rebuilt herself into someone worthy of protection. Look, I'm sorry, okay? I was young. I made mistakes. But that was years ago. You made a mistake years ago. Today, you committed assault in front of 100 witnesses in my city against my wife. Hai Zhang stood, towering over the chair. Those are 2 very different things. He pulled out his phone, dialed, and put it on speaker. It's done. A voice answered immediately. Good. Execute phase 1. Wait. Execute what? Stephen's voice cracked. What are you doing? Hai Zhang made 3 more calls. Each one brief. Professional. Devastating. Park. Confirming receipt of the files. Documents are with the prosecutor's office. Media outlets have the story. Running it in the morning edition. Stephen was shaking now, understanding dawning like slow horror. No. No, you can't. I have meetings tomorrow. I have investors. I have. By morning, Hai Zhang said quietly, slipping his phone into his pocket, you'll have nothing. No job. No investors. No reputation. The women you've stolen from are filing a class action lawsuit. The Seoul police have been very interested in the evidence I provided them. He crouched to Stephen's eye level. And every single person you were supposed to meet with tomorrow? They've canceled. Permanently. Please. The word came out broken. Please, I'll do anything. I'll apologize. I'll pay her back. You'll do nothing. Hai Zhang stood. Because you are nothing. You're a parasite who feeds on women's trust. And now you've been exposed. He walked to the door, paused with his hand on the handle. The zip ties come off in an hour. You're free to leave. But Stephen. He looked back. If you're still in Korea by sunrise, what happens next won't be legal. And I won't be merciful. The door closed with that same soft, terrible click. In the security office, Stephen Greer finally understood what he'd lost. And what he'd never had to begin with. The video went viral in 47 minutes. American businessman assaults woman in Gangnam luxury mall. It started on Korean Twitter, then jumped to Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. A dozen angles from a dozen phones, all capturing the same moment. Stephen Greer's hand connecting with Sarah's face. Her falling. The ornaments shattering. His sneer as he stood over her. Stay down where you belong. The audio was crystal clear. By hour 2, the internet had identified him. LinkedIn profile. Company bio. His smug headshot next to articles about disrupting the tech consulting space. Someone found his Instagram, private, but screenshots leaked anyway. Photos of him at expensive restaurants, luxury hotels, always with a different woman on his arm. Then the receipts started. At Rebecca Cho's Speaks. That's him. That's the man who stole $28,000 from me in 2019. Told me it was for our future. I never saw him again. Attached, bank transfer screenshots. Text messages. A police report marked insufficient evidence. At Amandor Hotels, Denver, 2021. He took everything. My savings. My grandmother's jewelry. Filed a restraining order, but he'd already left the state. This man is a predator. More screenshots. More testimony. A pattern emerging like constellations connecting across years. Then someone leaked the mall security footage in full. Not just the slap, but the aftermath. Park Hae-jong arriving. The way security deferred to him. Stephen being detained. The whole humiliating sequence. Korean news outlets picked it up by evening. Underground figure Park Hae-jong defends wife against abusive ex. American businessman's pattern of financial abuse exposed. Seoul police investigates serial con artist. Sarah sat in Hae-jong's penthouse, laptop open, watching her trauma become public spectacle. He sat beside her, hand resting on her lower back, silent but present. "They're calling you mystery woman," she murmured, scrolling through comments. "They want to know who I am. They won't find out. Not from me." His voice was firm. "Your privacy is yours. This story is about him, not you." But the internet was relentless. By midnight, 3 more women had come forward. One was 19 when Stephen had dated her, taken her college fund, disappeared. Another had filed bankruptcy after he'd maxed out credit cards in her name. The evidence mounted like a prosecution. Bank records, message logs, witness statements, a timeline spanning 7 years and 5 cities. 3:47 a.m. Sarah couldn't sleep. She watched her phone light up with updates. Tech Consult Solutions terminates employment of Stephen Greer, citing serious allegations. His company had fired him. Press release full of corporate speak about values and zero tolerance. 6:23 a.m. Venture capital firm pulls $2 million investment following viral assault video. The investors had walked. Every single one. Contracts canceled. Partnerships dissolved. 8:15 a.m. An Instagram story from a woman with a diamond ring. To everyone asking, "Yes, I was engaged to Stephen Greer. What I saw today made me sick. I had no idea. I'm so sorry to everyone he hurt." Stephen's fiancée had left him. Publicly. 9:42 a.m. A statement from his family, released through their lawyer. The Greer family is shocked and horrified by the allegations against Stephen. "We do not condone his actions and have severed all financial and personal ties. We apologize to his victims and support their pursuit of justice." Disowned by his own blood. Sarah watched it unfold with strange detachment. She'd thought she'd feel satisfaction, vindication, joy. Instead, she felt hollow. Not empty, but clear. Like fog lifting to reveal landscape that had always been there. "How do you feel?" Hae-jong asked, bringing her coffee as dawn broke over Seoul. She considered the question carefully. On her screen, Stephen's life was imploding in real time. Social media dissected every choice he'd made, every lie he'd told. He was being held accountable by thousands of strangers, his name trending for all the worst reasons. "I feel..." She paused. "Like I'm watching it happen to someone else. Like he's not real anymore. Just a cautionary tale." Is that closure? Maybe. She leaned into his warmth. Or maybe it's just distance. I survived him. That's the victory. This. She gestured at the screen. This is just the world catching up to what I already knew. Hae-jong kissed her temple. You didn't need the internet to validate what he did to you. No, Sarah agreed softly. But it helps knowing other women won't fall for his lies now. That he can't do this to anyone else. Her phone buzzed with a news alert. Stephen Greer leaves South Korea amid criminal investigation. Airport security footage showed him rushing through Incheon International, disheveled, desperate, catching a flight at 6 a.m. Running. Always running. But this time, the truth was faster. Sarah closed her laptop, set down her phone, and looked out at Seoul, the city that had witnessed her lowest point and her resurrection. Stephen Greer had left her with nothing 4 years ago. Now he was the one with nothing. And somehow, that didn't feel like revenge. It just felt like mathematics. Like gravity. Like the natural consequence of touching fire and expecting not to burn. "He's gone," she whispered. "He was never really here," Haijong replied. "Ghosts don't have power over the living." Sarah smiled, small but real, and finally felt the weight lift. The penthouse was silent except for the soft hum of the city below. Sarah stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, wrapped in Haijong's oversized sweater, watching dawn paint Seoul in shades of gold and pink. The internet was still dissecting Stephen's downfall. News outlets were still calling for interviews. But inside this space, 43 floors above the noise, there was only stillness. She felt Haijong approach before she heard him, the way she always did. His presence a shift in air pressure, a gravitational pull. "You didn't sleep," he said softly, not accusing. "Just observing." "Couldn't." He stood beside her, shoulder to shoulder, giving her space while offering proximity, always letting her choose the distance. "Talk to me," he said after a long moment. Sarah's throat tightened. She'd held it together through the slap, the confrontation, the viral spectacle. Had been strong, composed, controlled. But something about the gentleness in his voice, the safety of this moment, cracked the armor she'd been wearing. "I was 11 weeks along when I lost the baby." The words came out barely above a whisper. Haijong went very still beside her. "I was in a grocery store parking lot, living in my car. I hadn't eaten anything substantial in 3 days because I was rationing the little money I had left." Her voice remained steady, clinical, like she was recounting someone else's story. "The cramping started that morning. I knew. Somehow, I just knew. Sarah. I drove myself to the hospital. Sat in the ER for 4 hours because I didn't have insurance, and they kept bumping me down the priority list. By the time they took me back, it was already over." She wrapped her arms around herself. "They asked if I wanted to call someone. A partner. A family member. A friend." A single tear tracked down her cheek. "I had no one." Stephen had made sure of that. He'd isolated me so thoroughly that when I needed someone most, there wasn't a single person in the world I could call. Haijong's hand found hers, fingers intertwining. Not pulling, not demanding. Just holding. "The worst part wasn't the loss," Sarah continued, her voice finally fracturing. "It was how invisible it was. How I could go through something that devastating and the world just continued. Like it never happened. Like I never happened." "You happened," Haijong said fiercely. "You survived. That matters." "Do you know what I felt most?" She turned to face him, tears flowing freely now.
"Shame."
"I felt ashamed that I'd been so stupid. That I'd trusted him. That I'd let myself become so dependent, so isolated, so... Stop." Haijong cupped her face with both hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. "Nothing that happened to you was your fault. You trusted someone who didn't deserve it. That's not weakness. That's not stupidity. That's being human." The dam broke. Sarah collapsed into his chest, the sobs finally tearing free. For years of grief, shame, survival, and silence pouring out in waves. Haijong caught her, arms wrapping around her completely, holding her together while she fell apart. He didn't tell her to calm down. Didn't rush her through it. Didn't try to fix it with words or promises. He just held her, one hand cradling the back of her head, the other pressed against her spine, anchoring her to something solid while she shattered. "I've got you," he murmured into her hair. "I've got you. You're safe." They sank to the floor together, Sarah curled in his lap, Haijong's back against the window. He rocked her gently, the way you might comfort a wounded animal, giving her time and space to grieve what she'd never let herself mourn. "You survived," he said when her sobs quieted to shaking breaths. "You survived something that should have destroyed you. You rebuilt yourself in a foreign country with nothing. Do you understand how extraordinary that is?" "I didn't feel extraordinary. I felt broken. Broken things can be stronger when they heal." He tilted her chin up. "You're the strongest person I know. Not because you don't break, but because you break and still choose to keep breathing." Sarah searched his face, This man who commanded souls underground, who could destroy lives with a phone call, who carried violence in his bones and saw only tenderness. "Why me?" she whispered. "You could have anyone. Why choose someone so damaged?" He smiled softly. "Sarah, we're all damaged. I've done things that would make you run. I've built my empire on blood and fear and calculated cruelty. But you," he kissed her forehead, "you chose to build yourself on survival and dignity and hope despite everything. That's why you." He carried her to their bedroom, laid her down with infinite care, and climbed in beside her. No expectations. No demands. Just presence. "Sleep," he said, pulling the blankets around her. "I'm here. Nothing's going to hurt you." Sarah turned into his chest, his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. For the first time in 4 years, maybe longer, she felt truly safe. Not just protected from external threats, but safe enough to be vulnerable. Safe enough to be seen. "I love you," she whispered. "I know." His arms tightened around her. "I love you too. Now rest." And finally, wrapped in warmth and acceptance, Sarah slept without fear, without nightmares, without the weight of shame pressing on her chest. She slept like someone who'd finally come home. The first apology came via email 3 days later. Sarah was in Haijong's home office, researching nonprofit structures on her laptop, when the notification appeared. The sender's name made her breath catch. Just for a second. A reflex. Then nothing. Subject: "I'm sorry." She stared at it for a long moment. Haijong looked up from his desk across the room, reading her body language. "Him," he asked quietly. "Yeah. Do you want to read it?"
Did she?
Sarah's cursor hovered over the message. Once, this email would have meant everything. Would have been the validation she desperately needed, the acknowledgement that what happened wasn't her fault. She deleted it without opening it. "No," she said simply. "I don't." Haijong's expression flickered with something like pride. He returned to his work without comment, trusting her choice. The second apology came through Instagram the next day. A message request from an account she didn't recognize, Steven's new handle, stripped of his real name. The internet had made his original profile uninhabitable. "Sarah, please. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need you to know I'm sorry. For everything. I was young and stupid and selfish. I've been in therapy. I'm trying to be better. Please just give me a chance to explain." Sarah read it once, then showed it to Haijong over breakfast. "He wants closure," she said, stirring her coffee. "Do you want to give it to him?" She considered this. Part of her, the part that still remembered begging him to answer her calls 4 years ago, wanted to respond. Wanted to unleash everything she'd never gotten to say. Wanted him to know exactly how much he'd destroyed. But that would give him what he wanted. Her attention. Her energy. Her emotional labor. "No," she said, and meant it. She blocked the account. The third apology came through a mutual acquaintance, someone from Boston who'd somehow tracked down Sarah's email through old networking connections. "Steven asked me to reach out. He's really struggling with what happened and wants to make amends. He's asking if you'd be willing to talk, just for a few minutes. He says he needs to apologize properly." Sarah laughed, a short, humorless sound that made Haijong look up from his book. "What is it?" "He's persistent, I'll give him that." She showed him the message. "Now he's using other people." "What do you want to do?" What did she want? Sarah closed her eyes, searching for residual anger, hurt, need for revenge. Found only quiet. The kind of peace that comes from complete emotional detachment. She typed a response. "Tell Steven I don't need his apology. What he did is between him and his conscience. I've moved on. Please don't contact me again on his behalf." She hit send before she could second-guess herself. "That's it?" Haijong asked. "That's it." Sarah closed her laptop with finality. "He doesn't get my forgiveness. He doesn't get my anger. He doesn't get anything from me anymore." That evening, Sarah stood in their walk-in closet, looking at a shoebox on the top shelf. Inside were remnants of her old life, a few photos from Boston, the lease to her first apartment, a birthday card Stephen had given her once. She'd kept them not out of nostalgia, but because throwing them away had felt like admitting defeat. Like erasing proof she'd existed before the pain. Now, holding the box, she realized she didn't need proof anymore. She carried it to the living room where Haijong was working. Without ceremony, she opened it, removed the photos one by one, and fed them to the paper shredder he kept in his office. The mechanical whir was satisfying. Final. Goodbye, Stephen, she whispered to the last photo, her 28-year-old self, smiling beside a man who'd already decided she was disposable. The shredder consumed it. Haijong watched from the doorway, saying nothing, understanding everything. When the box was empty, Sarah threw it in the recycling bin and dusted off her hands. She felt lighter. Not dramatically, not cinematically. Just unburdened. I want to do something, she said, turning to Haijong. What kind of something? Something that matters. Something that helps women who are where I was. Her eyes lit up with purpose for the first time in days. I've been researching nonprofits. Organizations that help abuse survivors rebuild. Financial literacy programs. Emergency housing. Legal aid. Haijong moved closer, interested. You want to start something? Maybe. I don't know yet. She smiled, tentative but real. I just know I don't want what happened to me to be meaningless. If I can help even one woman avoid what I went through, or survive it faster. She trailed off. Is that naive? It's brave. He kissed her forehead. And I'll support whatever you decide. Sarah leaned into him, feeling the shift inside her, from victim to survivor to something new. Something forward-moving. Stephen's apologies didn't matter. His guilt didn't matter. His redemption arc didn't matter. What mattered was that she'd survived him. And now she was going to make sure that survival meant something beyond just herself. The past was finally completely quiet. And the future was starting to look like something she could build. 6 months later, Sarah stood in front of a glass building in Gangnam, reading the bronze plaque beside the entrance. The Phoenix Foundation Empowering Survivors. Rebuilding Futures. Her foundation. Her vision. Her legacy. Inside, the space was warm, deliberately designed to feel nothing like a government office or clinical nonprofit. Comfortable seating. Natural light. Plants everywhere. A place where women could come without feeling like victims, where they could begin again without shame. Nervous? Haijong asked beside her, looking devastating in a navy suit. Terrified, Sarah admitted. What if no one comes? What if this doesn't help anyone? He took her hand. Then we adjust. We learn. We try again. But Sarah? He turned her to face him. This will help someone. It already has. He was right. In the 3 months since opening, the Phoenix Foundation had assisted 47 women. Emergency housing placements, financial literacy workshops, legal advocacy, job training, small business microloans. Everything Sarah wished had existed when she needed it most. Haijong had funded it entirely, a quiet donation that had raised eyebrows among Seoul's elite. But he'd insisted on one non-negotiable term, Sarah's complete autonomy. Her board. Her decisions. Her vision. I'm giving you resources, he'd said when they'd signed the papers. Not control. This is yours. Today was the official launch event. Press, donors, community leaders. Sarah's first public appearance since the viral video, though now she was being introduced as someone else entirely. Sarah Park. Founder. Advocate. Survivor. The event space filled quickly. Sarah recognized some faces. Women she'd helped, volunteers who'd believed in the mission, local activists who'd championed the cause. Others were strangers, drawn by curiosity or genuine interest. A reporter from Seoul Daily approached during the reception. Mrs. Park, many people know you from the viral incident 6 months ago. How does it feel to transform that trauma into something positive? Sarah considered her words carefully. I think trauma doesn't transform into anything. It exists. It shapes you. But what you choose to do with your survival, that's where transformation happens. This foundation isn't about what happened to me. It's about making sure what happens after is different for other women. The reporter scribbled notes. And your husband's involvement? He gave me the resources to build this. But he doesn't run it, doesn't make decisions, doesn't control the vision. He understands that empowerment means letting people lead their own stories. Haijong watched from across the room, pride evident in his expression. That evening, they stood on their penthouse terrace, Seoul glittering below them like a sea of captured stars. The city that had witnessed Sarah's lowest moment and her resurrection. How does it feel? Haijong asked, handing her a glass of wine. Surreal. Sarah leaned against the railing. 6 months ago, I was on a mall floor, feeling like my past was swallowing me whole. Now I'm running a foundation, helping women rebuild, being interviewed by journalists who call me an advocate instead of a victim. You were never just a victim. No, she agreed softly. But I had to survive him to realize that. They stood in comfortable silence, the kind that comes from deep understanding, from choosing each other daily. Do you ever wonder what happened to Stephen? Haijong asked. Sarah thought about it. She'd heard through the internet grapevine that he'd returned to the States, was working some entry-level job, had largely disappeared from public life. The lawsuits were still pending. His reputation was permanently destroyed. Sometimes, she admitted, but not because I care. More like checking that a door I closed is still closed. And is it? Completely. She turned to face him, the Seoul skyline framing her like a crown. He thought destroying me was the end of my story, that taking everything from me would erase me. But Sarah smiled, not bitter, not triumphant, just certain. He didn't realize that sometimes you have to lose everything to discover what you're actually made of. He thought he was ending my story. She looked out at the city that had witnessed her transformation, at the foundation building visible in the distance, at the life she'd built from ashes. He was just writing my origin chapter. Haijong pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. So what chapter is this? The one where the survivor becomes the queen. Sarah leaned into his warmth, finally, completely at peace. The one where I stop running from my past and start building my future. The one where I realize that the best revenge isn't destruction. It's becoming so full of yourself that what they did to you becomes irrelevant. Below them, Seoul pulsed with life and possibility. The Phoenix Foundation's lights glowed among the skyscrapers. Women were sleeping safely tonight because Sarah had survived. Because she'd chosen to transform her pain into purpose. Stephen Greer had tried to make her disappear. Instead, he'd forged her into something unbreakable. And now, standing 43 floors above the city that had witnessed both her destruction and resurrection, Sarah Burris, Sarah Park, finally understood the truth. He hadn't broken her. He'd just given her a reason to rise. And rise she had. The end.